Baruchem Aboim B'Shem Hashem. B'Shem Egen Shir Termas is Boston. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's shir. I'd like to thank the sponsors of tonight's shir. Beilam Shem, Lili Nishmas Moshe Ben Rav Shloima, Lili Nishmas Ishachava Bas Aharon Yosef, Shalem HaSholem. Also as a schutz, Laud Mechaim Refuah Shlema, for Paralesta Bas Chava. I'd like to thank Mr. Michael Exter for sponsoring tonight's shir as schutz Refuah Shlema, for Meir Ben Sarah, Yosef Ben Rochel, Baruch Bari Ben Sarah, Dave Ruven Ben Rivka, Yael Ber Ben Chaya, Avram Yitzchak Ben Miriam, Sarah Bas Tasha, Chaya Bas Sarah, Niacha Bas Shabsa, B'Soy Shachel Yisrael. It's great schutz is sponsoring one of the remaining shirim. Call Egan Shir Tara 718-851-865 on the email ist@yeshivanet.com. Tonight we have the cover to have with us once again Rabbi Aharon Pessin Shlita, dynamic speaker, author, Rav and Ramat Beit Shemesh, holding on strong through challenging times. There's a whole selection of svarim available from the Rav that are available for purchase on the table near the door after the shir. So I covered the calling of Pessin for tonight's Rosh.
Shalom Aleichem, it's a tremendous chus to be here once again, to have a little chelik in the spreading of Torah worldwide that they do. In Mitzvah Hashem, I want to announce on behalf of Irgun Shiurei Torah that next year's summer program is not going to be here. Mitzvah Hashem, they don't have a venue yet in Yerushalayim, but it will be in Yerushalayim. In Mitzvah Hashem. Should continue to go from Chayil and Chayil, the organizers, the facilitators, Bishul Rabol, and the other Rabbonim, Talmidei Chachomim, in Mitzvah Hashem Kol Kodesh. We just heard the title, Holding on Strong in Difficult Times. How do we do it? We already have a chazaka here, Chazdei Hashem, to ask the Talmidei Chachamim who are present, Kol Kodesh. We're going to present different cases and ask for the correct halachic approach. What does the Kodesh Baruch Hu want from us in situations like this? And we're going to start with some cases that came about as a result of the horrific attack and massacre in Simchas Torah Taf Shin Pei Daled. And then we'll ask the Tzibu to participate, and we'll speak more in Mitzvah Hashem about how do we deal with difficult times and anticipating Mashiach B'Kov B'Yameinu. So the first case, Rabbi Isai Dayani Mumchim, Shimon Rabbi Isai. One of the terrorists, Iyamach Shemam, that was caught, is mamish about to die. The doctors in Eretz Yisrael treated him. He's about to die. And he says, as a kapara for what I did, as an atonement, I want to donate some of my organs to the Jewish people who need it. Yerushalayim. Comes a Yid who needs a heart transplant, a liver transplant, and asks, can I take from this guy? Yamach Shemai v'zichoi. But now, I need this organ, he says. Can I? Should I? Is it appropriate? How do we look at this? Can you take a transplant, an organ, a liver, a heart, from a Yamach Shemai v'zichoi? Rabbi Isai Dayani Mumchim. What do you say? Not everybody together. I can't hear when you're yelling at me. One by one. You're saying yes, partial to you. Shh. Open and shut case. Anyone wants to differ? Anyone begs to differ? Rabbi Isai, it's clear that you want to take it from him. Would you like an organ from a Yamach Shemai v'zichoi Hamasnik? Would you? To one of your relatives? You would agree? I'm sorry, what did you say? What did the Rav say? What's going to be with the Yiddish? Aren't you afraid it's going to create cruelty in the person who receives that organ?
I never thought about that before, but that's a very good point.
And what is the answer to that good point?
Same idea, the fact that he's trying to give it up in the first place means that he's not the same.
He did tshuva.
But at least not coming from the same.
You have no problem accepting it. Psh. Flatbush. Wow.
Could be on a list, a general list,
Yeah.
and get an open. You don't know who that person is. You don't know what he's doing.
But our question is in the case that you know, it's Muhammad. Mustafa Abdullah. And he says, I want to give my heart to a Jewish fellow. I want to atone for what I did. Do you have a problem receiving it from him or not? No, not a problem. We have a strong coalition. We have 3 people who say yes. Anyone wants to differ? You want to say something? So clear, eh? Unless it's not a pikuach nefesh, you can choose a Yiddish heart or a Goyish heart. Is there any difference? Does it make a difference?
After World War II, there was that Luke days. The doctor is supposed to take something like that and live on and fight them every second.
Well, that was about the money, or that was about organs? Organs?
In general,
80 years ago, organs?
the organ wasn't a thing back then. They didn't
But I'm talking about organs. Because organs potentially can create cruelty.
We have a choice. I thought there was no choice. We have a choice about
Let's start with a choice. There is a choice. Is there a difference? What's the difference? And if you're going to say there is a difference, why aren't you choishish in case that there is no choice?
What we think of as the heart motivates us. I don't know if it's the physical organ, or it's really the brain,
mind.
or it's really the soul. So, I'm not sure.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
I don't think it's the physical organ.
It's not the physical organ.
I think the middle would translate it lady with mind.
What do you say? Do you have a problem taking it or not? Shemuna Raboisai, Adonenu da Ramban, Rosh Verishoin, Leraboseinu Arishoinim, in Vayikra, in Parsha, in Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Gimel, says the Ramban. Why is it that the Torah answered certain birds? Why is it that the Torah answered certain behemoths? This is kosher, this is not. Stay away from this. Why? What's the difference? Says the Ramban, those animals which are also, which are tameh, are predators. They're cruel. And if you eat them, potentially you can become cruel. This is the Ramban. He has a friend, another Rishon, the Kolboy, in Simen Kuf Aleph. He has another friend, strong coalition, 3 Rishonim, Ritva. In Yevamos, Kuf Yud Daled Amud Aleph says, why is it that a Jewish baby should not nurse from a non-Jewish lady? Why not? Technically speaking, Al Pidin, you're allowed to. But it's the wrong thing to do. Says the Ritva, because where did she get the milk? The Gemara Nida says, Dam Nechar v'nasa chalav. It's from her blood. Where did she get the blood? From eating nevelos and shkatzim and remosim. And that turns into blood. Ve'adam hu nefesh, and that creates cruelty and bad nature. That's the language of the Ritva. So, according to these 3 Rishonim, the answer should be pashut, that you should not take any organ from that person. And if it's a kal v'chomer. If when you take the milk from the mother who ate shkotzim and remosim and levelis and all the wrong things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said stay away, and that can potentially create cruelty, what about if you take an actual organ from that person? Lichoyer it's a pashut kal v'chomer. However, we should reject that kal v'chomer. Because the physical body, as you said, doesn't have bad character traits. Bad character traits are all spiritual. It's the neshama. Not the physical body. That's not the heart. It's not the liver. And what I said now is also incorrect. Because the neshama is chelek Eloka mima'al. It's a spark from the heavenly throne. The neshama doesn't have bad midos. So what is it? Where are those bad midos? Good midos and bad midos come from the nefesh. We have 5 parts to the neshama. It's called naran chi. Nun reish nun ches yud. Shama, ruach, nefesh, chaya, and yechida. 5 parts to the neshama. In the nefesh is where you find bad character traits. And the pasuk says, Yadam hu ha-nefesh. So based on what we're saying until now, you should not take a blood transfusion from a nochi, from an Eino Yehudi, because that, in fact, can create cruelty, but a physical organ doesn't transfer any bad midos. It has nothing to do with the car. It has to do with the driver. Has to do with the nefesh in the person, not with the physical car. But there is a Ben Ish Chai. Sha'al Shuvas Rav Pe'alim. In Chelek Dalet Sod Yeshorim Simin Hey, and the Ben Ish Chai writes that a Tamadika creature, Biryat Meya, and the basar of Nevela, and Terefa, if you touch it, do you become Tameh?
Well,
No. Even though the pasuk says v'nitmei sembam, and eating the wrong foods can cause a person to forget his Torah and to become foolish, to lose his brains, but touching it does not. Because writes the Ben Ish Chai, the issue is not the physical aspect. It's when you take that physical meichel and you attach to that the aveira. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, stay away, don't eat it. And you do. You're eating the wrong food and you're eating it at the wrong time. It's an aveira. The aveira is what metamtem the nefesh. The aveira is what makes you lose your brains. Not the actual physical item. That's what the Ben Ish Chai says. And if therefore he writes, if somebody is be'oines, he had no idea. The doctor ordered him, you must take this chazir. But you think HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to make him lose his brain? No, there's no aveira here. There's actually a mitzvah. When the doctor says, you shall eat this now, you must. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands you to eat it. And when you do what HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, do you think any harm can come your way? Avade not. That's what the Ben Ish Chai writes. It's the combination of the food along with the aveira that's metamtem liboy shel adam. But the Ben Ish Chai has opposition, major opposition. The Menachem Azaria of Pano, we call him the Ramat with an ayin, not with an aleph. The Ramat mi Panoi, one of the greatest Mekubalim, but the Poisek of his generation about 450 years ago. And that's a very rare thing that you have a Mekubal who is also a Poisek. The head Poisek and leading Poisek in his time and the leading Mekubal wearing two hats at the same time. And in Kanfei Yoina, in Chelek Aleph, Simen Kuf Yud Aleph, Chelek Beis. And he is not alone. Because the Shloh HaKodesh in Yuma Hilchos Teshuva, Meshech Chochma in Parshas Vayeschanan, Or HaChaim HaKodesh in Parshas Shemini, and you have others as well that maintain. It's a metzius. When you're eating the wrong food, it doesn't make a difference. If it's be'oines, if the doctor told you, it's a metzius. When you go into a tanner, that's where you process hides. It doesn't make a difference if you're going to buy the item, if you're going to touch the item, you're going to come out not a very pleasant smell associated with you. And supposed to that, when you go into a store selling perfume, you don't have to touch anything. You don't have to buy anything, but when you come out, it's a very pleasant odor because it's a metzius. And if it's a metzius, it affects us. So these gedolim that I just mentioned maintain that if you eat the wrong foods, whether there's an avei or not, it doesn't make a difference. It's a metzius, and you will be affected by it. However, even according to those gedolim, lichoira, we must say that that's only when you eat it kederech achila, in a natural way. If you get an injection of these items, of blood coming from whatever, chazir, or any of these items that we mentioned before, that's not going to cause you anything. There's no harm going to come your way. It's only when you eat it b'derech achila. So according to that, we have no problem, based on what we explained, receiving the heart transplant, or the liver transplant, or any other problem, except maybe for the blood transfusion. Because hadam, hu hanefesh, as we said, and the nefesh is where all the character traits, good and bad, are stored. But for a different reason, potentially we should say, no good, don't accept it. Why? Because in Baba Basa Daf Yuda Mud Beis we learn, one should not accept a tzedakah from an Eino Yehudi. And why not? The Gemara says, it's such a tremendous mitzvah, it prolongs the galus. It gives him such schus upstairs that it actually extends the time that we have to spend in galus. And more than that, you want him to have a kapara for what he did? Let him deal with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I don't know how Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to deal with him. That's his problem, not ours. We don't want to give him a kapara. Why should we? So we do not want to extend the time we spend in galus. It's been enough. 1956 years. We want to go back to Eretz Yisrael. Beis Hamikdash, Mashiach Tzidkeinu. And we don't want to give him any zchuyos. Based on that, lichoira. If there is a choice, you should take the Yiddish heart, you should take the Yiddish liver. If there is no choice, all the cheshbonos fall by the wayside because bikuach nefesh, doiche. It overrides kol hatoira kula, except for 3 averos chamuros, the 3 cardinal sins we all know, giloy arayos, shfichus damim, and avodah zara. But when you have the choice, based on what we said, lechoira, we should say no to those organs. We should prefer taking them from a Yid. There's a 3 halakim sefer about the Ponevezher Rav. In Chilek Gimel, page Reish Tzad Gimel, fascinating story. The Ponevezher Rav was actually here in the States, in Mount Sinai Hospital. He needed a blood transfusion. And Dr. Hyman and Dr. Leifzig, that's the names of the 2 doctors, I don't think they were Jewish. They wanted to give him the blood transfusion, and he said, please make sure I only get Yiddish blood. I don't want an Eino Yehudi blood in me. And they said, sure, Rabbi, no problem. That they thought it's ridiculous. And they took regular blood, Eino Yehudi blood, and as soon as the needle hit his body, before they actually injected the blood, his body starts shivering and shaking, and he starts saying, no, I'm not going to have any Eino Yehudi blood ruling over my body. And he kept saying it over and over and again, and his whole body is moving, and they never saw anything like it. They weren't able to administer that transfusion. They pulled it out. They called Yeshiva Torah V'das, and they got one of the Bachurim to donate the blood for the Ponevezher Rav. That's a Kaf Aleph. 18 years later, again he was in Mount Sinai Hospital. This was the last time he was there because he never recovered and he passed away. But again, he needed the blood transfusion. This is 18 years later. It's not the same doctors that treated him back then. So they told him he needs a blood transfusion. He says, fine, but just make sure Yiddish blood. I don't want an Eino Yehudi blood. And they said, the doctor said, never heard anything like this. What are you talking about? Blood is blood. And he said, doctor, I'm sure that they kept my records. Go and look in my file and you'll understand. And in fact, they saved his records back then from 18 years before that. And they saw that this body rejects an Eino Yehudi blood. So the doctor told him, I actually had an announcement put on the radio that we're looking for a Jewish blood for the Ponevezher Rav, and they got it. And Baruch Hashem, he had a blood transfusion, not from an Eino Yehudi, as he desired. Abo Isai, that was the first Shaila. Let's go to the second case. Simchas Torah Tafshin Pei Dalet. In one of the kibbutzim, everybody knew what was going on. They all were SMSing, texting each other, and WhatsApp, and emails, and calling. They all knew what was going on. One of the homes, there was a father with his 2 children. One is a pikeach, is a normal kid, and the other is also a very cute kid, but halachically defined as a shoite, which means he is exempt from all mitzvahs. They're the same age. Let's say they're both 14 and 15, or 7 and 8. In other words, they're in the same category. Above bar mitzvah or under bar mitzvah. The father himself is in a wheelchair. His father, which means the grandfather of these boys, is right across the street. The old man is hard of hearing. He doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't have any cell phone. He has no idea. And we must tell him, you got to go into the safe shelter, to a safe place, a special room. It's called the mamad. It's safe over there. You can't just stay in the living room. The only way to do it is for this father to instruct one of his kids. Cross the street. I'm going to write a little note. Daddy, you got to go right now into this shelter. Now, to cross the street, they both did it 1,000,000 times before. Not a problem. But here comes the shaila. The father is asking, whom should I send? The pikeach, normal kid, or the shoite, the one who's halachically exempt from all mitzvahs. He loves them both dearly. They're great kids. But one is chayv in mitzvahs and one is not. Is that a consideration? Or maybe you should do a lottery. What's the difference? They're both the same age category, 14 and 15 or 7 and 8. Is there a difference? Should we prefer sending one over the other? Or maybe not. Rabbi Dayani Mumchim. What do you say? What's that? The shoite. Why do you want to get rid of him so fast? It's dangerous out there. There's Hamas, Yamach Shemam terrorists with guns. The other one can keep mitzvahs. Let's get rid of the shaitan. You're saying if I have to choose. This is a Beit Din. In a Beit Din, we need documentations. Sources. You got to give me something. I like what you're saying. I like your svara. But in order to rule in a Beit Din, we need some kind of documentations. I'll take anything. I'm not picky. Shulchan Aruch, Chumash, Navi, Gemara, whatever. But you got to give me something.
Well, actually,
What a second. You're sending us a Shulchan Aruch Yoredei Reish Nun Gimel. When you have a son or a daughter to save, you save your son first. Why? When everything else is equal. Why is that? Because it's more mekudash. Not that we have anything against the girl, but he has an opportunity to fulfill more mitzvahs. That is the right order and prioritization in saving. Who says it follows suit for endangering? You have a source for that? What do you say, Rabbi Isai? I'm sorry? He must. He himself can go. So you're saying, listen, the old man had a nice life. Forget about the old man. Is that what you're saying? If you're right, we should basically cancel this whole industry called policemen, Hatzalah, fire department, soldiers / army, bodyguards. You come first. Why should I endanger myself for you? Listen to a Mishnah Berurah in Shin Chavtes. Wachaim Shin Chavtes, Mishnah Berurah says, it is true that one does not have to endanger himself to save a friend. However, says the Mishnah Berurah, one who is medakdek in this and says, I don't have to endanger myself to save you. Ultimately, he is going to be in the same situation. So if it's a 90% chance that you're not going to come back, of course not. But when you look to the right, you look to the left, and there are no terrorists in the street, and you can cross the street, even though it is dangerous, you should. Dinei milchama is not like, regular times when you want to endanger yourself. You shouldn't. If you see your friend drowning, it's dangerous out there, and you know how to swim, shouldn't you go and help him? Of course you should. So there's no question that the father should do it, and he's going to do it. He's going to send one of the kids. The question is just, whom should he send? How about you say, what do you say?
that depends. It may depend on whether the one who's considered a shaita has enough gas to protect himself. Because if he doesn't, then maybe you should send the PK.
You hear an answer? The answer is very simple. And I think what you're saying is you're mechaven to a Gemara. It's so simple, it's one liner in the Gemara. Avoid the Zorah of Lamed Amud Beis. Rabbi Eliezer says one is allowed to eat grapes and figs at night. That's exactly what you said. Okay, so next Shaila. You look puzzled for some reason. I'll repeat. Rabbi Eliezer says one is allowed to eat grapes and figs at night. So you have an answer to our question, right? Further clarification? Rabbi Eliezer says you're allowed to have grapes and figs at night, and you shouldn't be choishesh. As you are choishesh when you leave certain beverages uncovered overnight. If you leave water, milk, wine, Rashi Tevos Chaim, Ches is chalav, milk, Yud is yain, wine, and Mem is mayim. If you leave those beverages uncovered overnight, you should not drink them in the morning. Why? Because we're afraid. Maybe a snake came to visit and he left you a little souvenir, poison inside. So why is it, says Rabbi Eliezer, that you're allowed to eat grapes and figs left overnight uncovered in the morning, and you shouldn't be choishesh? Because David HaMelech wrote a pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Yud. Shomer Pesayim Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over those who are fools in the matter. The Toras Chaim, he's a Kadmon, about 450 years ago. Over there in Avodah Zarah Daf Lamed Amud Beis explains, HaKadosh Baruch Hu chafetz betikun olamui. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants this place to be a nice, good place for people to be able to live in. So if you're negligent and you can cover those beverages and you didn't, you should not drink them in the morning. You were negligent. But in the process of making raisins, in the process of making dried figs, you can't always keep them in a container. And therefore, when you can't save, watch over a certain matter, a certain Kodesh Baruch Hu says, don't worry, I'll give you extra siyata dishmaya, heavenly protection, and I'll watch over those items. Shomer Pesai Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over those who are fools in the matter. I think that's what you're mechaven to. In other words, if you have these 14 and 15-year-old kids, and you're going to send the guy who is normal, the pikeach, and he's going to want to see what's going on outside. Ooh, matzav, you got terrorists, machine guns. I want to see. He's 14, he's 15 years old. He wants to see the action. So therefore, he's going to be negligent. If he is negligent, you're better off sending the shoite because he is going to be protected by HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he can't protect himself. But if the pikeach can watch over himself, and he will, lichora, you should send him. So lichora, we have an answer. Mamish in one line of the Gemara. Look how beautiful our Torah is. You go to Avodah Zorah the Flamet Amud Beis. You find some figs and grapes, and you have an answer to a pikuach nefesh shayla in Aza Simchas Torah Tafshin Pei Daled. Why not Chaim? Because milk, wine, and water, you can cover them. So why didn't you? So Kodesh Baruch Hu says, I'm not going to give you extra siyata d'shmaya, extra protection when you were negligent in the matter. But when you can't watch over something, Kodesh Baruch Hu says, don't worry. I'll do it for you, and I'll watch over you. That's the meaning of Shomer Pesai Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over those who are fools in the matter. In other words, they don't have koyach to save, to protect that item. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll step in, don't worry. In this case, lichora, we should say the same. And maybe we can say what you said before. The source is Horios, Gemara in Horios, Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. We learn in the Mishnah the prioritization when you come to save a life. If all things are equal, you have a Kohen and a Levi, they're both drowning. You must go and save the Kohen when everything else is equal. We don't have anything. Is there any Levim in the house? We don't have anything against Levim. We like Levim. But a Kohen is more Mekudash. He has more mitzvahs to fulfill. When a Levi and Yisrael are drowning, we go for the Levi because he has more mitzvahs to fulfill. When a man and woman are drowning, we go for the man because he has more mitzvahs to fulfill. Even though on the spiritual ladder, the woman may be on a much higher madrega, but it's a technical thing. So this is true when saving. I don't know if we can apply the same thing and say when we're endangering, we should follow the same prioritization. It makes sense, but we still need documentations for that, and I don't have one. But lichora, it makes sense. But based on what we said, maybe we can get the answer from Avodah Zorah Daf Lamed Amud Beis, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu watches over those who are fools in a certain matter. Boy Isai, put your seatbelts on for this one. Terrible Maise, mamish terrible. In one of the kibbutzim called Migdalois, Simchas Torah, Tafshin Pei Dalet, there was a guy by the name of Shloimo Ron. Hashem Yikom Damoy. Hashem should avenge his blood speedily. When the whole thing started, he took his wife, he's an elderly man. He took his wife and his granddaughter into that shelter. And he told him, just wait, I'll be back, I'll be back. He wasn't planning to come back. You know what he did? He went to his living room. And he sat there drinking his coffee and eating a croissant. Making believe as if he is a person who lives here by himself. The Hamasnikim Yemach Shemam will come in. They will shoot and kill him. And they will spare his granddaughter and his wife, thinking he's the only man who lives here. He's drinking in his living room. He's probably by himself. That was his plan, and that's what happened. Now comes the Shaila. Shh, Tzaddik! But are you allowed to do this? Are you allowed to, if he came to us before and asked, am I allowed to do this? Is this what Kosh Baruch Hu wants? Am I allowed to, should I? How do we look at this? I'm sorry? Kedosh Eloid. You're sending us to Baba Basra Daf Yud Amud Beis, explain more in Rashi and Tanis Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. Oh my, what happened there? In the city of Lod, there was a non-Jewish king. His daughter was murdered. And he turned to the Jews and he said, I know you guys killed my daughter. And if you hand me the murderer, I will spare you all. But if not, I will kill you all. Two brothers, Papus and Lulianus, came over and they said, dear king, we did it. Of course they didn't. They were tzaddikim. But in order to save the entire town, they said to the king, we did it. And they were executed. But the whole town was saved. The Gemara calls them Harugei Malchus. And Birya Yechoila Lamod B'mchitzasam. No one comes to the chamber upstairs that they are in. That's what you're referring to? Is he like Papus and Lolianus? You're saying yes. Anyone doesn't like what he did and thinks that this is a little exaggerated, maybe you're not allowed to. What do you say, Rabbi Isai? A little louder? Is that tzaddik? Are you allowed to do this? Excellent. What's the answer? Give me 2 for the price of 1. But when we have the time to do that, and we can instruct in Chalila, this halacha should only be la halacha, and not lemaise, Chalila. But if we had the chance, and a person would call us, what should we instruct him? I'm sorry? You wanted to say something? But you, the individual who entertains this thought, am I allowed to do this or not? How should we instruct that person? Are you allowed to do this or not? A little louder? You know, it's interesting. Only twice in the Torah there's a mitzvah that gets the word me'oid, exceedingly. It doesn't say put on tefillin, me'oid. Never says that. Keep the Shabbos, exceedingly. It doesn't say that. Only twice. Watch yourselves exceedingly. And again, apparently it's very important to Kodesh Baruch Hu that we watch ourselves, body and soul. But we said before, if it was true that we can't endanger ourselves to save others, we're canceling the army, we're canceling police officers, we're canceling many, many different industries that are created in order to save others by endangering themselves. So can we apply that over here? There's a fascinating sefer called Besamim Roish. Besamim is perfume. Roish, one of the Rishonim. Reb Shaul Berlin, about 200 and something years ago, put out the sefer. He claimed that he found fascinating Shuvus B'chsav Yad of the Rosh, one of the Rishonim. He called it Besamim Roish because Besamim has a numerical value of 392, and there's 392 simanim in the sefer. Besamim, the perfume of the Rosh, one of the Rishonim. And in Siman Shin Mem Hey 345, the Besamim Rosh maintains that one is allowed to commit suicide. If it's too hard for him, there's Yisurim, poverty, too many worries. Based on that, it's 100% kosher. Kosher v'yasher. The only problem is, the Chassam Sofer didn't call this sefer Besamim Roish. You know what he called it? Kizvei HaRoish, the lies of the Roish. Because there are such strange things in the sefer, along with fascinating pilpulim and lamdanus. For example, he says that one is allowed to ride a horse on Shabbos if he's going to lose a lot of money if he doesn't. He speaks about committing suicide. He speaks about the 3 averos chamuros, and he says not always do you have to give up your life. He says the minhag of not eating kitniyos on Pesach, as we Ashkenazim do, that's a Karaite minhag. You're allowed to marry the Karaites, and he goes on with strange things. And yet, there's some amazing things in the Sefer, and therefore the Poskim, Ledoiro Sehem, treated this Sefer in a very strange way. On one hand, they took from it the good, and they just ignored and rejected the bad. Instead of throwing out the Sefer, many of the Poskim accepted the Sefer. Most of the Poskim accepted the good things in the Sefer and rejected those strange things. So I don't think that we can actually use the Besamim Roish for this Shaila, but what you sent us to Basad Afyud Amud Beis, Lichoira with Harugei Lud, yes we can. But there's a machlokes, interesting machlokes, Chazon Ish and Igros Moshe about this story. The Chazon Ish in Yoredei Simin Samech Tes maintains that Papus and Lulyanus, these 2 brothers who saved the city of Lud, were actually from the city of Lud. And even though they themselves were in danger, they are called Harugei Malchus. And no one comes close to the chamber upstairs that they are in. The Igros Moshe says, if they were from that city, so what's the revusa? What's the big deal? They would be killed as well. So they killed themselves one day before. And therefore he says they came from somewhere else. I don't know from where. From Haifa, from Beit Shemesh, from Yerushalayim. I don't know where. They came to the city of Lud saying, we did it. And now, because they're endangering themselves when they didn't really need to, that's why the Gemara calls them Harugei Malchus. But according to the Chazon Ish and the Igros Moshe, Both will agree that you're allowed to do this. The only question is, do you call them, you give them this lofty title, Haruge Malchus or not, but both will agree that you're allowed to do this. Another source, Sanhedrin Yudaled Amud Aleph, the Gemara says, in the time of Yehuda ben Bava, the Romans decreed, you're not allowed to give smicha anymore. The smicha started at the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. But now the Romans said, that's it, no more smicha. And anyone who gives smicha will be killed. Anyone who gets the smicha will be killed. The city that they're going to do this in will be uprooted, and the region this is done in will be uprooted. Yehuda ben Bava did not want this chain all the way from Moshe Rabbeinu on Har Sinai to stop, and therefore he took 5 Talmidei Chachamim to an area outside town between 2 mountains. Let's see who uprooting the mountains. And he gave them smicha. And as he did, they saw the Roman soldiers coming, and Yehuda ben Bava told these 5 Talmidei Chachamim, run fast! Save your lives, and they did. Why didn't he try to go with them as well? So he was old, so he was weak. But what about the Ishtadlus? Says the Iyun Yaakov over there, Sanhedrin Yudaled Amud Aleph. You know why? Because he had the same thought. They have it. That Shlomo Aharon that we're discussing now had, because he said, you know what? I'll stay here. They'll catch me, chief rabbi, and they'll kill me. And these 5 Talmidei Chachamim will be spared, and that's exactly what happened. And in fact, the Gemara says, the Roman soldiers came, and they stuck in him 300 swords, and until they made his body like a sieve. That's exactly what happened in our case. Shlomo Aharon Hashem Yikom Damo said, let them kill me, and my wife and my granddaughter will be saved. And that's exactly what happened. So I think, yes, lechatchila, one would be allowed to do this. Exactly like the case one before mentioned with a soldier, and it didn't happen once, it happened many times, jumping on that hand grenade, saving everybody else in the tank or wherever that happened. So lichoira, yes, one will be allowed to do a thing like this, and he is called Harugei Malchus, Kodosh Elyon, ve'en birya yechoila la'amod b'mchitzas, unless we go with the position of the Chazon Ish, and he doesn't get this title, Harugei Malchus, but even according to Chazon Ish, as we said, he will be allowed to do this. But what about what you said before? Chayecha koidmin lechayecha vecha, your life comes first. This is a Gemara in Bab Metzia Samech Beis. We learn the Machloikes, Ben Petura and Rebbe Kiva. 2 people are walking in the desert. They only have 1 jug of water belonging to one of them. Ben Petura says, share it with your friend and don't see how your friend dies. Until Rebbe Kiva came and he taught, no. Chayecha koidmin lechayecha vecha, your life comes first, and you drink the bottle of water alone. But a tremendous chiddush. The Or HaChaim HaKodesh is a perush on the Torah, but he also wrote a halachic svarim in his sefer on Yoredea called Rishon LeZion in Simin Reish Mem Zayin Seif Aleph, and he is not alone. He has 2 great friends. Shaz Shuvis Halachos Ketonos Reb Moshe Chagiz in Chelek Aleph Simin Reish Chavtes, and the Machne Chaim in Chelek Gimel Yoredea Simin Samechei. These 3 Gedoli maintain that what Rebbe Akiva said, Chayecha Koidmi Lechavei Chavecha, your life comes first, is not an obligation. It's a permission. It's reshus. If you want to, the water is yours. You can drink the whole thing up. You don't have to share it with your friend, but you don't have to. That is a great chiddush that most poskim do not accept. But you have 3 Gedolei Olam that say this. So we don't have a problem with that. Based on all we said, Shlomo Aharon is a tzaddik. And he was allowed to do this even lechatchila. The Zohar HaKodesh says, in Bereshis, Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, there are 7 chambers up there. And the Zohar describes who sits in each of those chambers upstairs. And in the 4th chamber sit all those who died in the hands of Goyim just because they were Jewish. And the Zohar over there doesn't say that they put Rabbeinu Tam, Tefillin, and they daven not 3 times a day, they daven 6 times a day, and they only ate certain echsherim. The Zohar doesn't discuss this. As long as a person died in the hands of a Goy, because he is Jewish, the Zohar says, he sits in that very, very lofty chamber upstairs. It's a fascinating Chiddush over there in the Zohar. And a pasuk we all say from Tehillim, we say it every single week, except when there's no Tachanun. Yadin. Maboisa, you're still with me? Yadin. Bagoim. What's the next two words? Malagaviyos. What does that mean? We say it every single Shabbos. Yadin Bagoim Malagaviyos. What does that mean? Says the Zohar HaKodesh. Ibit Hashem Bekorov. Soon, soon, soon. When HaKodesh Baruch Hu is going to come, the great judgment day, to judge all the Einam Yehudim, he is going to be wearing a very special royal garment. Yadin Bagoyim, he's going to come to judge them. How? When he's going to be wearing this special garment, Maleh, full of Geviois. This garment will have all the images, maybe passport numbers, I don't know. All the images of all the Jews throughout the generations that died in the hands of the Goyim just because they're Jewish. That's how he's going to come to judge the Goyim Mitzvah Hashem real soon, speedily in our days. Shlomo Ron's image is going to be there, along with all others. And you must assume that Rabbi Akiva is on a much higher level than Shlomo Ron. But they're all in the same chamber. And there's different levels in that chamber, as we should expect. But just because a person is willing to, Moisa Nefesh, or dies, in the hands of Goyim, because he is Jewish, not only does he have a share in the world to come, and it doesn't make a difference, his observance, Shmiras Torah, mitzvahs, he goes up there to the fourth chamber, where all those people sit as well. So that's a shaila I once was zoichet to ask my Rebbe, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Maran Sarah Torah, Zecher Tzadik v'Kodesh Livrocha. I came to him, I said, Rebbe, I'm about to go to be Menachem Av, a secular Yid, who died in a terrorist attack. And Menachem Av l'mishpacha. Can I tell him mishpacha that he was a Kadosh? He died in the hands of Goyim just because he was Jewish. There's machlokes in that. Reb Chaim says to me, yes. I said, Rebbe, I'm sorry, I need a source. He says to me in the Zohar. I said, Rebbe, I need an exact source. I need an address. Where in the Zohar? I heard the biggest Chiddush I ever heard in my life from Reb Chaim. אני לא זוכר, צריך לחפש. I don't remember, we have to look. Reb Chaim! First time ever. I asked him hundreds, maybe thousands of shalas. I never heard him say such a thing. So I went digging. That's where I found the source. The Zohar HaKodesh, as I mentioned before, Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph in Bereshis. That is a Zohar. So yes, even if he wasn't Shomer Torah Mitzvahs, a special schus. He probably did something great in his life. I don't know why he got the schus. I don't work for them upstairs, for the accounting department upstairs. But apparently, he did something gigantic, really, really big. And for that, he got the schus. Yes, even he is called a Kadosh, and even he gets to sit in that chamber, fourth chamber, with all the other tzaddikim that died on Kiddush Hashem. So Rabbi said we keep discussing Mashiach, and we yearn for Mashiach, we anticipate for Mashiach. Let me ask you a question. We daven 3 times a day. In Shmoneh Esrei, we ask, Matzmiach Keren Yeshua, we ask, Ribono Shel Olam, give us Mashiach, and if you eat bread, you say it again, and Boine Yerushalayim. Can you ask for Mashiach and Geula more than those 3 prescribed times a day, and if you eat bread the 4th time a day, oh, that's it. Stop right there. What do you say? Can you ask for Geula a little more than that? It's pashut. Everybody agrees? Why not? Are you sitting? Hold on to your seat. Adoneinu Rashi. Ksubis. Kuf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Over there we learn about the 3 Shavuos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us and the nations take. One of them is Shelo Yidcheku Es Haketz. But the Gemara doesn't say that. The Gemara's language is Shelo Yerachaku Es Haketz. What does that mean, Shelo Yerachaku Es Haketz? Don't distance the end. What does it mean? Comes the Maharsho and explains. Lo Yerachaku B'machshavtam. Don't think. It's never coming. In my lifetime, I'm not going to see Mashiach. Chas v'shalom. One of the 13 principles of our faith is Ani ma'amin b'chol yom sheyavoi. Chas v'shalom, to distance the end in your machshava. That's what the Maharsha says. But Rashi has two different interpretations. First interpretation of Rashi, Shelo yerachaku es haketz ba'avoinam. Don't sin, and that will distance the end. That's the first lishna, the first interpretation of Rashi. But Rashi says, lishna achrina. Don't read it, Shelo yerachaku, don't distance the end. Rather, Shelo yidcheku. Listen to a startling 7 words in Rashi. If it was in Rashi, I don't think we would believe it. Rashi says, Shelo yarbu betachanunim al kach yoiser midai. Don't daven too much for Geula. You didn't fall off your chairs. So let's repeat it. Maybe this time you'll fall. Shelo yarbu betachanunim al kach yoiser midai. 7 unbelievable words. Says Rashi, stop davening for Geula too much. Pilei ploim. Many wonder about this. The Chassam Sofer in Chelek Vav in Likutim Simen Pei Vav writes a letter to his father-in-law. Who's his father-in-law? Rabbi Akiva Eiger. And he says, how is this possible? Rashi says, don't daven for Geula too much. We're instructed to daven to Geula. We're instructed to yearn for David Malkeinu, for Mashiach. What's going on here? In fact, there's a medrash that he brings, Medrash Shoicher Tov and Tehillim, Perek Yud Ches, and the medrash says, in the time of David HaMelech, there was a claim on that generation, even though Beis HaMikdash was not built yet. Why is it that they're not seeking Beis HaMikdash? And the Medrash continues and says, we had Beis HaMikdash and we lost it. How much more so there's a claim on us? Why are you not requesting Beis HaMikdash? So says Chassam Sofer, how is this possible? Rashi says, don't daven for it too much. And therefore the Chassam Sofer writes to his father-in-law, he says, I think what Rashi means, Shelo yidcheku es haketz, that means forcefully. Meaning, don't use Shemos and Hashbaos and Kabbalah. Daven as much as you want. But don't do strange things to try and bring Geula when it's not in its time through other means other than davening. Using different names and different shavuos and all kinds of as if hocus pocus, Kabbalah to bring it. No, that's not in your hands to do. Daven as much as you want. That's what the Chassam Sofer says, but perhaps in a different way. There's an amazing Yerushalmi in Brachos Perek Daled Halacha Aleph. We hear the opinion of Reb Abba in the name of Reb Levi. Davening too much can actually shorten a person's life. He brings a source from Chana. Chana davened. And davened. I want to have a Shmuel. And how long did Shmuel live for?
52.
Only 52 years. Bingo. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because she davened too much and that shortened his life. Asks the Gemara, but wait a second. Just before that we learned the Gemara that it's very good to daven a lot. So what's the problem? How does it work? And the Gemara answers, Ha beyachid, ha betzibur. Individual davening too much, dangerous business. Tzibur, daven as much as you want. I think the understanding is pashut. When an individual comes, mano a mano, into HaKadosh Baruch Hu, whoa, wait a second. Who are you to come one-on-one? And he is fully scrutinized. And that can be dangerous. And that's why you should never miss a minyan. Because when you come with a koyach hatzibur, you're not scrutinized as an individual. In fact, the Gemara says in Brachos Daf Ches, back to Bavli, Le'olam, never does a Kodesh Baruch Hu reject the tefillah of tzibur. Because you have a koyach. Maybe we have a new chiddush now. Berov am hadras melech. We normally understand it to mean great gathering is a beautification for the king. But based on what we're saying now, we have a new understanding. Berov am, when the tzibur is increasing their davening, that is the beautification of the king. Hadras melech, berov, when the tzibur increases the amount of times that they're davening, givaldik, go for it. It's only a problem for the individual when he davens. Based on that, maybe what Rashi said is to an individual. It's dangerous. But betzibur, ask for Geula as much as you want. Maybe. But perhaps what I'm saying is, contradicting by Gemara. In Brachos Lamed Beis Amud Beis, the Gemara says, what should a person do if he davens and he sees that he is not answered? Yachzor ve'yispal, daven again. Sheneemar, Kaveh Hashem, Chazak v'yametz libecha, and again, ve'kaveh Hashem, daven again. So it's exactly the opposite of what we just said. I don't think it's such a big problem, because there's an Iyun Yaakov there. And the Iyun Yaakov says, you know what the Gemara means? If you daven the first time and you weren't answered, maybe it was the time of wrath of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Repeat the davening again. Maybe now it's an Eis Ratzon, and the pasuk says, Be'es Ratzon inisicha, I will answer you in the time of Ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is not talking about increasing in many, many times. Just daven twice. That's the Iyun Yaakov, but even a greater Chiddush. In Sidur Ezor Eliyahu and the Gaon Mevilna, as well as in his interpretation to that Gemara, Brachos Lamed Beis, and even before him, Rabbeinu Yoina, not in Sha'arei Tshuva, rather in Igeres Tshuva that is printed in most Sha'arei Tshuva in the back. In Ois Vav, they both write an unbelievable Chiddush about this Gemara. You know what it means? Yachzor ve'yispal, you should daven again? Listen to Chazal HaShatz! That's all it means. Daven the first time. Then when you listen to the Chazan, it's as if you daven again. Pillei ploim. So the Gemara never talks about you davening again and again and again and again. So it doesn't negate anything we said before. I had the zchus to daven with Reb Chaim Zatzal many, many times, hundreds of times. Shachis Mincha Ma'ariv. And always in Chazal HaShatz, I saw that holy finger following the Chazan word for word. In his private davening and Chazal HaShatz. And don't worry, Reb Chaim Kanievsky knows Shmona Esrei by heart, just like we all do. And yet, every word counts. So he kept looking in the Siddur. In fact, it's a Mishnah Bura that repeats himself twice. He brings some Dashla HaKodesh. Or Chaim, Simin Tzadi Vav, Seif Kotten Tes in the Mishnah Bura, as well as Kuf Chav Dalet, Seif Kotten Chav Vav. The Mishnah Bura writes in the name of Dashla HaKodesh, it's the right thing to do, to look in the Siddur and to listen to the Chazan. And that's basically what the Gaon Mevilna and Rabbeinu Yonah are saying. Yachzor v'yispalel, daven again, just means listen to the Chazan. And it's counted as if you daven twice. The Ben Ish Chai writes, O zarua latzadik uleyishrei leiv simcha. No, says the Ben Ish Chai, don't read it simcha. Change the letters around. Uleyishrei leiv chamisha. Those wise people don't daven 3 times a day, they daven 5 times a day. Shachis twice, your private Amida and the Chazan's. Mincha, your private Shmoneh Esrei and the Chazan's repetition. And Ma'ariv, that's Chamisha, Le'yishrei Le'ev. Those smart individuals actually daven 5 times a day. And the Kisvei Ha'ari Zal, Kaf HaChaim, Ben Ish Chai bring them. Writes that the tikkunim that are done from Chazal HaShatz are actually greater than the Shmoneh Esrei B'yachid that we daven. So it's a good idea to follow the Chazan, to listen to him. And Shomea Ke'oineh, and it is counted as if you actually davened twice. So how much should we anticipate Mashiach? It's a great Michtav Meliyahu in Chelek Gimel, page 280. And he brings a mashal from his father-in-law. There's a family, one of the relatives there is on his deathbed. And they called the doctor. And they're waiting for the doctor. The doctor says he's going to come. So they're sitting there all with this patient. And suddenly, knocking on the door. So some of them run to the door. It's the neighbor's daughter. She wants a glass of milk. 5 minutes later, they run over. Somebody asking for tzedakah. 3 minutes later, somebody else knocks on the door. It doesn't make a difference how many times they keep knocking on the door, even after 50 times. And the 51st time that it wasn't the doctor, will they give up hope and say, doctor's probably not coming? No! They're running to the door with the same enthusiasm. In fact, maybe even more, because now there's greater chance that it's actually the doctor coming to help. And the Michtav Meliyahu writes that there's a special koyach, nitan ba'adam. Listen to a statement that the Michtav Meliyahu says, koyach, a special koyach, special strength given to a person. Shelo yisyaesh, never to despair, never to give up hope. Midavar asher yachpotz boi bechol libo, from something that you really desire, something that you really look forward to. To what degree? There's a Gemara in Avodah Zorah, Daf Tes Amud Beis, that says, if somebody comes and offers you a deal of a lifetime, a land worth $1 million for $1, 1,000 dinar for 1 dinar, $1 million for 1 dinar, don't buy it. Rashi explains, Lama tafsid hadinar, why do you want to lose that dollar? This is a Gemara talking about Chutz Laaretz. Mashiach is coming. How much do you think that land is going to be worth when everybody's living? This is not Paskin Lemaisa and Shulchan Aruch. You can continue buying real estate. But it's a Hashkafe Gemara that carries such weight. And what a message! Lama tafsid hadinar, because that is how, to what degree that we should anticipate Mashiach. You know, many people ask. In fact, many people want to ask, but they're not brave enough. They're embarrassed. But some people are brave enough to ask what I think is on many people's minds. And recently I was asked the following question. This person writes to me, I heard many shiurim that only 1/5 of the Yiddish will be redeemed soon, speedily in our days. Only 1/5, because the pasuk in Micha says, Ki meitzescha me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu niflos, just like the days of yore, just like the time I took you out of Egypt, the same way it's going to happen again. And back then only 20% were redeemed. So this guy says to me, with what merit do you think why should I view myself as the person from that elite group that can and will be redeemed? We have to anticipate Mashiach. So he writes to me, I don't know the truth. I don't know if I really want Mashiach to come, or if I want Mashiach to come. Where am I holding? I know I'm supposed to want it, but do I really desire it? Or I want to desire it, and more than that. There's a Gemara in Oshana Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph and Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi in the Mishnah that lists all kinds of averos. That if one is involved in those averos, he will not get up. And Trias HaMesin, he will not come. Le'olam habo. So he writes to me, listen, we have nisyonis, and I stumble again and again and again. With what right and what chutzpah do I have to think that I will be counted among those tzaddikim? How do we deal with this? And I think it's a question that's on many people's mind. And first of all, we must know that the rachmanos, the compassion, and the mercy and the love that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for each and every one of us is greater than the rachmanus, the compassion, the mercy, and the love of any father to his only child born after 20 years. In fact, why do you think that Geula is still not here? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu only wanted to redeem that tzaddikim, he would do it a long time ago. HaKadosh Baruch Hu extends the galus to give a chance to every person, even a Pashut Yid, to refine himself, to polish his midos, to do tshuva, to be counted among the tzaddikim that will be redeemed. It's a chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he extends the galus. The Chafetz Chaim writes, Chelek Beis in Shmiras Alosh on Perek Yutes. This was the claim of Klal Yisrael at the time of the Meraglim back in the spies. And they said, yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to give us the land, but he only wants to give it to the tzaddikim, not to us. And they were wrong. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I'll give it to anyone as long as you don't rebel. That's why Yeshua and Caleb finished their speech by saying, Ach b'Hashem, al timroidu, as long as you don't rebel. It's true, in Yetzias Mitzrayim only 1/5 came out. But they rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu's stretched arm. They saw the open miracles. They saw Moshe Rabbeinu. They saw already 9 plagues. They saw it all. And yet they didn't want to come out. That's rebelling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. None of us are rebelling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Chas v'shalom to think like that. How can we compare today to back then? When darkness covers the land, they saw open miracles. In the list in the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, Tzadi, the kings and the Hedyotas that the Mishnah says, they don't have a share in the world to come, they will not resurrect. When did they live? First Beis HaMikdash. Again, they saw open miracles on a daily basis. They saw HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then to sin, that's an open rebelling against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It has nothing to do with us. And in fact, the Gemara actually says at the end that they are coming to Olam Haba and they will resurrect Tchias HaMeisim. And we must remember that the punishments in the Torah, Chas v'Sholom, are not coming from a revenging God. They come to polish our midos. They come to refine us. They come to clean us from our sins so we will be counted with the tzaddikim. As Rashi writes, beginning of Parshas Nitzavim, Rashi says, why is Nitzavim juxtaposition to Kisavoy? Because after Klal Yisrael heard 98 curses and rebukes, they said, who can withstand this? And Moshe says, but you guys are still here. And it's the klalos and it's the yisurim. That because of that, you're still here. So when you leave, you're all clean. You're ready to go. It's a good idea to say every single day. The 13 Ani Mamin. To have the kavanah of Ani Mamin. The Bias HaMashiach. B'chol yoim sheyavoy. The Yismach Moshe, about 150 years ago, brings from his father that Reb Chaim Vital, the disciple of the Arizal, asked his Rebbe. The Mishnah says about Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah that his cow would go outside on Shabbos with a certain strap, and that's against his own shita. And because of that, he fasted so many times as an atonement that his teeth became black. The Yerushalmi says it wasn't his cow, it was the neighbor's cow. But because he didn't protest, it is counted as if it's his cow. Rabbi say, imagine. Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah goes out on Shabbos in the street. Do you think he's looking at cows? His head is up there. In Babakam, Bababasa, in Zvachim, and Menachos, and Chulin. Then he goes back home and they say, Rebbe, do you know that your neighbor's cow has nothing to do with him? It's your neighbor's cow that came outside today with a strap. My neighbor's cow and I didn't protest. Ooh. He fasted so many times as an atonement that his teeth became black. Says Reb Chaim Vital to the Arizal, so what do you want from us? What are we going to have to suffer? Not for somebody else's sins, not for our neighbors, that we didn't even know about it. For our own sins, what's going to happen with us? And the Arizal said to him, you should know, in our generations, one true, sincere anacha, a sighing from the depth of the heart of a Yid, is more dear and important to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than all the fasting and the afflictions of the Rishonim. This, says the Yismach Moshe 150 years ago, how much more so in our generations? This was said by Reb Chaim Vital, Reb the Arizal 450 years ago. What are we going to say? That's what the Yismach Moshe says. What are we going to say today? Tafshin Pei Dalet 57784. When the Yetzer Hara has such great techniques that he's using now, never to be seen from the time of creation. One sincere anacha, a sighing from the depth of the heart of a Yid, is more dear to HaKadosh Baruch Hu than the Tanios and the Sigufim, than the fasting and the afflictions of the Rishonim. Rabbi said, I'm not a Navi. I'm not a prophet, nor am I a son of a Navi. But there's very, very little time left for Galus. Very little time. Because it's the year 5784. And the Gemara in 3 places in Shas says that this world is built for 6,000 years. And just like Shabbos, we bring Shabbos early. HaKadosh Baruch Hu does the same to us. And he's going to bring Geula early. He doesn't have to wait until 6,000. It's very, very near. All the simanim listed in the Gemara, in the end of Soita Daf Memtes, of the footsteps of Mashiach are here. There's very, very little time left in Galus. Let's make sure that we take advantage of this time to refine ourselves, to be better. Midas Toivos, Talmud Torah, Gmilus Chesed, Tzedakah, just to smile, to make people happy, and for the merit of making people happy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mitzvah Hashem will make us happy. Bebias Goyel Tzedek, Bekoro B'Yameinu V'Noima Omein.
Shem Egan Shir Torah Moses Pessin. I'd like to give a big Ashikayach to Rabbi Pessin for the very inspiring drasha. The Sfarim of the Rav are available to purchase on the table near the door. Big selection of Sfarim from the Rav available for purchase right now on the table near the door. Ashikayach to tonight's sponsors of tonight's shir, which we mentioned at the beginning of the shir. The Rabbi Aharon and sponsor the remaining 2 shiurim by calling 718-851-8651 or email ist@yeshivanet.com for this great schus. Ashikayach to everyone for coming. Rechananya ben Akash Shemesh HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis Es Yisrael Afikach Hebel Torah Mitzvah Shnemal Anoich Chofes Aman Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.